This is Hockey Talk, where we talk everything hockey. I am John.
And I'm Mike.
All right, Mike, let's go. Now, the first topic for this evening, Mike, is I want to go back and look at some of your early predictions that you made earlier this year. We were talking about this last week. You said you wanted to do it, so I thought, absolutely. So, Mike, what predictions did you make earlier in the year that you want to go back and discuss tonight?
All right, so basically, for some of the players we talked about, some that I thought that would have, pretty good years, and some that I thought would not have good years. So, we'll go through about 10 or 12 guys here that I talked about earlier,
Okay.
just so that if people wanted, a little bit of a follow up. So one of the first ones was Jonathan Huberdeau. So started off really good this year, but the last 5-10 games he's really slowed down. So he's back to basically the pace he was on for the most part last year. So I think the early season turnaround was just the early season when Calgary was playing well. Next one is Brent Burns, who I had said was going to struggle, and sure enough, he has. I believe he's only got 5 points on the season, so he's lost his number one power play job to Goss's Bear, as we had thought he would. So not really a surprise at this point what to expect from him going forward. Special mention to Taylor Hall, still terrible. I know we've got a regular listener that is a huge Taylor Hall fan, and I know he would want an update, so I had to fill that one in. Now, one that I didn't do so well on so far is Wyatt Johnson. I thought he was going to have a really good season, and so far he's struggled a bit. And not just him, but the whole first line that Dallas has really struggled. Hintz and Robertson have not played well. I think that perhaps losing Pavelski hurt them a little bit more than what we thought that it might. So the scoring's come down off of that top line, but the rest of the lines are still producing. So Wyatt Johnson so far not hasn't panned out as well as I thought. Next one is David Perron of the Senators. Recently, he's been a healthy scratch, so he's only got a few points on the season. So he's father time, I believe, is finally caught up to him. Sean Couturier, a Flyer player,
one of your favorites.
With the exception of his 1 5-point game, he's only got a few points on the season aside from that. So, he's back on the top line, and he's started to play a little bit better recently, but still not going to be a high-end producer in my opinion. So next one that I thought was going to have a good season and has gone off the rails is Morgan Frost of the Flyers. In the doghouse now, was a healthy scratch last game. If I was going to guess, he might be on his way out the door if the Flyers end up making a trade. He just can't seem to take that next step. So, got that one wrong. I don't see it changing at this point. I mean, Tortorella is pretty, when you're in his doghouse, it's hard to get out sometimes. So, and he was last year as well. So, next one is Chris Letang. So Chris Letang, another one that having a poor year as predicted.
Yep.
He's only got like 5 points, I think, on the season as well. He's no longer on the number one power play, and sometimes not even on the number two power play in Pittsburgh. So clearly, he's not going to be the high end point producer that everybody was hoping or thought he might still be. Next one is Braden Shen. Braden Shen, I think at best is a 40-point guy now, the way he's being utilized, more of a third-line player now in St. Louis. They're letting the young guys take over, which is kind of what I expected was going to happen at the start of the year. So his point-producing days are pretty much behind him, I think, for the most part. Just a few more to touch up on. Last forward I want to talk about was Pavel Dorofeyev, who, when we had first talked about him, I listed him as a real dark horse depending on his line placement. And if he was on the top two
Right.
lines, he would be a producer. And if he wasn't, he was going to not really do too much. So, with that being said, he's one of Vegas's top goal scorers. He's got 8 or 9 goals on the season already. So, he's clearly taken advantage of the situation with, a couple injuries. First, Carlson was hurt, then Mark Stone's hurt. So, he's taken advantage, and I think he's going to stick on the top two with the production he's put up. Last but not least, the goalies. So, out of the goalies that I talked about, I kind of went 2 for 3 on the bad side so far. Um, Darcy Kemper and Philip Gustafson have both had very good seasons so far. I mean, Kemper's only had the one really bad game that he had gotten. They lost 8-7, I think it was, to Ottawa, but that was it. I mean, other than that, he's been fairly solid. Gustafson has really stood out. Minnesota's played well, so Minnesota's goaltending in general has been good. His Fleury's undefeated as well. And the one that I've been 100% correct on so far is Tristan Jarry, who's been terrible. Um, I mean, it got to the point where they had to send him to the minors to try to get his game back together. So they've just called him back up. Not sure when he's going to get his first start since he's been back. I believe Nedeljkovic is going to get the start tonight. So maybe on the weekend we'll see Tristan Jarry back in nets. But yeah, so those are the ones. So I've done fairly well, I think, for the most part on some of my player predictions, and we'll see what the rest of the season brings for those guys.
The one that I found interesting that you were talking about was Letang. I mean, do you think that he could be trade bait somehow? I'm assuming his contract is quite large.
Who's that? Sorry.
Letang.
You know, I think he's a lifer in Pittsburgh. I
Is
don't
he?
think. Yeah, and I'm pretty sure. I don't not sure, certain of the specifics on his contract, but if I'm a betting man, he's probably got a no trade clause in there. So unless he wants to waive it, I don't think he's going to go anywheres. And before we continue, I just will mention that I apologize if you hear the dogs in the background. I've currently got 10 in the house, which wasn't fully planned on, as 2 of them were supposed to go to Newfoundland today, but the ferries were shut down, so the travel didn't happen. So we've got them for a couple more days. So you're going to hear some dogs. So I apologize for that.
That's all right. Now, why do you have the dogs? Why don't you tell our listeners why you have them?
Well, I volunteer for several different rescues, and one of the rescues transports some of the adopted dogs to Newfoundland. So, in order to do that, they have to wait for the truck drivers, because they have some truck drivers that do regular runs from New Brunswick to Newfoundland. So, we've got 2 dogs that we picked up last Wednesday or Thursday, and so they're just supposed to be here for the week, but their stays extended a couple days because of the weather. It's apparently really windy, so they shut the ferries down. So anyways, yeah. So we're watching them until they can catch their ride to Newfoundland, so to their adoptive families.
Excellent, excellent. It's great work, Mike. Great work. I'm sure that people are really, really appreciative that you do that. So great work for man's best friend. That's what I say.
Yeah.
All right. Well, let's go on to our second topic because, Mike, I have been dying to go on about this because our second topic tonight is going to be the Montreal Canadiens. And why, Mike? Why do I want to talk about the Montreal Canadiens? Well, first of all, you and I and a bunch of other friends went to the St. Louis Bar and Grill here in Moncton and watched the Saturday night game between the Toronto Maple Leafs and the Montreal Canadiens. And we sat there and watched the whole game, and it was really it was a great time. We sat there and watched it, and we got to see the Montreal Canadiens lose to the Toronto Maple Leafs 4-1. And to be honest, the Canadiens really never they never really challenged. And that was 6 losses in a row for the Montreal Canadiens. That's not good. Now I know they did go and win the game the next night, but six losses in a row is not cool. Now one of our friends that's there, he just wants Montreal to take small steps forward. He doesn't necessarily want them to make the playoffs, but a little bit of improvement here and there would be nice. But Mike, are they any better than last year? I'm starting to wonder, and what is wrong with this team? Or maybe there's nothing wrong with the team. Maybe they're just rebuilding and it's just the way it's going to be. What do you say?
Yeah, I don't think that they're going to be much better than last year, other than having the extra year of experience. With that being said, once they can get Patrick Laine back, he'll help the team. But aside from that, the team that they have now is basically the same as what they had last year. So
Mm-hmm.
hasn't been many changes there. So um, with that team, with it being such a young team, and the defenseman aside from Matheson, very young. I mean, Matheson's the most experienced guy there. Aside from that, I mean, the rest of the guys are in their early 20s, I think. So um, I suppose they've got David Savard, who's a little older as well. But, with a young core like that, they're just going to go through some growing pains. The top lines started to pick it up a little bit. Slavkovsky and Suzuki and Caulfield, although I know they switched their lines up a little bit lately and
They
they put
did.
Caulfield on the second line. But, um, this is kind of what should be expected out of the Montreal Canadiens at this point. They're still, a few years away from contending. A lot of it will have to do with gaining more experience, perhaps bringing in some key veteran players to help these young guys out. Would be a good idea for them. Probably next year would be my guess. Goaltending's been average at best, so they do give up a lot of goals. So it's like I said, and part of that has to do with the defense being so young, making mistakes. It's going to happen. So pretty much what you see is what you're going to get. They're a team that's going to probably get around, I don't know, 60, 65, 70 points on the season, I would think. But I
Right.
wouldn't expect much more than that.
Is Martin St. Louis at risk of getting the boot this season and not being the coach next year?
I don't think so. I think he's going to stick around for the rest of the year. I mean, when they brought him in, they knew that this wasn't going to be a quick fix. So um, he's definitely going to be there for the rest of the year this year, I would say, and I can't see why he wouldn't be there next year either. So um, yeah, so I think he's probably safe based off of the current situation there.
Okay, now so far this year, Mike, the Canadians have scored an average of 2.6 goals per game, but they've allowed an average of 4.07 goals per game.
Yeah.
How much of this is the goaltenders? How much of this, I guess, do the goaltenders get the blame for? Now, you already said they're playing average at best. The defense is young and inexperienced. Do you give the goalies 50% of this problem or what?
Uh, well, I mean, I would say roughly yes. The defense definitely hasn't done them any favors, to be honest with you, just because, like I said, the young and the inexperience is showing, as well as the forwards need to be better defensively as well. When the goaltenders are hung out to dry here, sometimes it just takes the forwards being back a little bit more or tighter checking, simple things. But when you got younger guys, they want to try to, I don't know if it's want to be a little bit more creative and take more chances, but that could be part of it. I mean, if they're gambling and cheating a little bit more than they should instead of playing a tight system, that could be part of the issue there. But in general, I mean, they're just the majority of the other teams in the NHL are just better. So
Right.
and that's gonna end up coming through at the end of the day. The better teams win the majority of the games. So it just is what is how it is.
Okay, well, let's stay in the same conference, same division, I guess. The Buffalo Sabres. Let's talk about them, Mike, because they had a horrible start to the season. They weren't even in the continent, right, when they started the season.
Right.
And now they started out horrible. They've picked it up lately. They looked good until Monday's game against the aforementioned Montreal Canadiens, a 7-5 loss. They are 7-8-1. Okay, so not great, that's for sure. Their goalie, Luukkonen, was pulled after the second period against Montreal after allowing 4 goals. Can the Sabres win with Levi as their goalie, Mike? Is Luukkonen, because he might be injured. I heard them say he was maybe day to day. Can they win with Levi at all? Is he any good at all?
He's a good young goalie. However, I don't think he's going to be the answer for them. So I think they better hope Luukkonen doesn't miss much time, if any. He's clearly the better of the two goalies. He's gotten most of the starts. I was a little surprised he started the game against Montreal because I know that the way that the NHL teams kind of rotate their goalies nowadays, I was kind of expecting Levi to get that start, but they didn't, and I think it gave Luukkonen like 4 starts in a row or something like that.
Right.
Um, Most teams now with their number ones, they'll give them 3 starts in a row at most, and then the backup goes in for a game. It seems, unless there's a back to back, obviously, but. So yeah, I was. I just think maybe they overworked Luukkonen a little bit, and he just had an off game. But he's the answer that in Buffalo for their goaltending. I mean, they started the season off as 1-4, I believe it was.
That's
So
right.
so since then they've been 7-4, which is pretty good. So yeah, and I mean, I think that, like I said, Luukkonen's the guy. I don't know if Levi's ready, so they better hope that Luukkonen doesn't miss much time if at all. So
Yeah, it was brutal for them. They started in Europe and played those
yeah,
2 games, and they lost both really badly. I believe against New Jersey, wasn't it?
yeah, New Jersey. Yeah.
So yeah, but I mean they've looked better lately, and then they just laid a goose egg there the other night against Montreal. But so, and I've always liked Buffalo. When I was younger, I used to follow Buffalo quite a bit. I was a fan. I mean, they haven't done
I know
anything in
you were
years.
LaFontaine and
Yep,
Mogilny and
that's right. Absolutely. Yeah,
Housley, and I think you
absolutely.
I think you kind of patterned your game a little bit after Phil Housley.
No, come on, not even close. Not even close. Well, let's. I want to ask also about Tage Thompson, Mike. Now, is he the most important forward for the Sabres? Now, he has 10 goals and 7 assists in 15 games. Now, he is also out day to day. Is he their most important forward?
I think so. And last year he missed a lot of time,
He did, yeah.
and that really. And I think when he was playing, I think he was playing hurt a little bit because he had a bit of an off year, regardless of the games that he had missed. I mean, the whole Sabres team in general had an off year last year, but Thompson's definitely the key. Like 2 years ago, he had like 90 points roughly.
Right,
I don't remember the exact number, but it was right around 90 points. And the team played fairly well for a young team that it was. So this year, it's going to hurt them if he's out any length of time. But I think they've got some stronger reinforcements than they did a couple of years back.
right.
Paterka has played really well for them. So, I think he's probably the guy who's going to be one of the top goal scorers on the team. Him and Thompson will probably be the top two. Alex Tuck, he's played pretty well for them. And they've kind of built their defense up a little bit better now with Darlene, Bowen Byram, and Owen Power. So they've got 3 solid offensive contributing defensemen now,
That's the
which
first
is
time they've
definitely
had that in years, right?
exactly. And not many teams have that type of three defensemen that can produce points. I definitely know the Flyers don't. So if we could just get one, I'd be happy. But with that being said, the Sabres are like I thought going into this season they would have a shot at a wild card spot. The Eastern Conference is tough to squeak in. So if they do, it'll be at the expense of possibly the New York Islanders from last year, or it won't be the Capitals because the Capitals have played really well. So
They look
it's
really
it's
good.
it's it's going to be tough for them to get into the playoffs as is. So I mean, but I do see the team improving. lots of good young players. There's a few other younger guys they've got on the roster, and Quinn and Benson, who still have a ways to go. They haven't really taken that next step yet. So, but Buffalo is a team on the rise. Whether it's going to be this year or not, remains to be seen. But yeah, they do need Tage Thompson to be playing.
Well, I believe he's only listed as day to day, so I don't. Hopefully, it's not too serious, and hopefully he comes
Right.
back and gets about 10 goals in 15 games. Pretty good. He would be on pace for 90 points if he kept the pace up. So
Mm-hmm.
that's pretty good. So we're going to stay in the East for this whole show, Mike, because I want to talk about the Pittsburgh Penguins next and the absolute beating that they took Monday night against Dallas. They lost 7-1, and I believe Dallas scored 6 goals on on Pittsburgh in the first damn period. Now, I mean, that's crazy. Now, Pittsburgh's record is 6-9-2. I would say the chances of them making the playoffs are slim at best. And it'll probably make it 3 years in a row because the last 2 years they haven't made the playoffs. So, is there any hope for this team at all, Mike? And how many years will this team not be in the playoffs?
There's no hope for them making the playoffs this year, in my opinion. I said this before the season started. I'll say it again. I've never been, sold on the goaltending. I thought Jerry looked a little shaky last year, which is the reason why they started Nedeljkovic through the last dozen games or so, for the most part, last year. And the team it's an older team. Crosby, Malkin, Carlson, Letang, these guys aren't getting any younger. So,
Nope.
and all the weight is on them because they're the producers. So, the older guys are having all the pressure of producing on them, and they don't really have any younger guys that are really stepping up to alleviate that. Um, they've got they've got some talented guys, but they just traded Lars Eller yesterday back to the Capitals. So if you're starting to trade away your guys now, it's generally a sign that for draft picks, it's generally a sign that this isn't the year, and it's not, and it's not going to get any easier for them because they don't have a ton of high end prospects coming up. The main one they've got is the guy they got from Winnipeg, Rutger McGroarty, but he struggled to start the season, so they sent him to the minors. But it's going to be a tough go for Pittsburgh. Like I said, Father Time is not kind to when it comes to hockey.
No, no. And the Pittsburgh team has been so good for so many years that this is just inevitable. It was going to happen sooner or later.
Yeah.
I mean, and now, I mean, 3 years in a row not making the playoffs. I mean, it was bound to happen. I hate to see it because I like to see Crosby do well. He basically put the team on his back last year and almost got them into the playoffs. I mean, he did everything he could.
Mm-hmm.
I believe he finished the year with 94 or 96 points or
He
something.
was he was in the 90s, yeah. So he had a
Yeah,
good year.
he had a great year. It doesn't look like he's going to get that this year unless he really takes off because the team is really, really struggling. I mean, they took an ass whooping Monday night.
Yeah,
a real whooping. So,
yeah.
all right. Well,
I'm sure
Mike.
there'll be more
Oh,
of those in the future too. Unfortunately, Jordan.
yeah, yeah, I think so too. I hate to say it, but I agree with you. So, Mike, let's go into our hockey profit segment. This is where I ask you a series of rapid fire questions, and you're going to answer them as fast as you can. Okay, Mike. So, anytime, are you ready for the hockey profit segment? Let's see if you can create some hockey profit segment for yourself here. Let's see if you can get some of these right. All right, are you
Okay,
ready?
let's
All
go.
right. All right. Number one, should Shea Weber have been inducted into the Hockey Hall of Fame?
It's a tough one, but I'll say yes.
Okay. Number two, next year's Hall of Fame inductees could include Ryan Getzlaff. Will he make the Hall of Fame?
I would not be surprised if he did. He's got a Stanley Cup and he's had some solid seasons, so I'll say yes. I'm not guaranteeing it next year, but he will. I think he will get in.
Okay. Number three, is Coach Mike Sullivan on the hot seat now in Pittsburgh?
I would say so. Yeah.
Yeah. Number 4, Mike, you're going to love this one. Matvey Michkov was benched by the Flyers for 2 games, and his first game back, he scored a goal. He had an assist. Should Michkov have been benched?
Reluctantly, yes. You want me to elaborate or keep going?
Sure. Yeah. Go ahead. Elaborate. Yeah.
With some of these young guys, you heard. I personally, I did not like the idea, to be honest with you. When Tortorella was going to scratch him, I'm like, oh my god, like, come on, he's the best player on the team here. Him and Konechny, like, what are you doing? Like, anyways, it's part of the process, he says. So, and maybe it was helpful, and I hope it was. He sat out 2 games, came back, first game back, like you said, was a goal and an assist.
Look good.
Was played very well. Was +2, and also scored in the shootout to help the team win the game. So no complaints. I wasn't getting all these massive text messages asking where Michkov was tonight, where my favorite player Michkov was tonight, and this sort of stuff. And people telling me they wanted to take a trip down to Florida to see him play, but couldn't find him. Anyways, that's maybe some egg on their face now, I guess. And let's hope that this gave him a bit of a kick in the pants to let him know he needed to keep producing, because he did struggle the last 5 or 6 games that he did play prior to this. So let's hope that this was just one of those things and gets him back on track for the rest of the season.
All right. Well, the final question, Mike, for tonight is, which NHL team has the best mascot?
Oh, come on. It's going to make me sound biased. There's no one better than Gritty. Everybody knows that.
Gritty for the win. I say Gritty
Absolutely.
for the win. I didn't like Gritty at first, but I think Gritty's pretty good. So I have to admit, I've been following Gritty a little bit, and we might put some stats up about him here in the show notes. But I thought he was pretty good.
I mean,
so Mike, you did that. Oh no, go ahead, Mike.
Yeah, very few people liked Gritty when they first introduced him, and I was a little skeptical myself. I'm like, oh my god, what is this? But he basically took on the persona of the Flyers, and has been great. I mean, loves to torment like the other teams and that sort of thing, which that's a Flyer thing. That's what we got to do. So,
especially now.
Absolutely. And he's one of like the most popular mascot in the league, I'm sure. I think he's got like an Instagram following and all this sort of stuff that is no others, I think, are able to match. So as far as like followers or that sort of thing. So
well, I may have to put his Instagram link in the notes here.
I think I actually follow him on Instagram. I don't go on it very often, I'll be perfectly honest, but yeah, so, and they always have these little vignettes type of thing on what he's doing and that sort of stuff. So it's very entertaining. Clearly probably the most loved mascot by some and the most hated by others. So Gritty's awesome.
So, Mike, you did that in just under 3 minutes. It was 2 minutes and 56 seconds. A little long, but I wanted you to elaborate on Michkov being benched, so that was good. Now, is there anything else that you wanted to say in tonight's episode? I know we stuck to the East Coast pretty much here tonight, but
no, nothing else that I'd really like to add for this one. Maybe next week we'll talk a little bit more some of the West Coast teams. I know that there's been a little bit of some of the teams that struggle out of the gate have started to pick it up a little bit. So I think we can talk a little bit more about the West next week. So I'm all good.
All right. Well, folks, like, share, and subscribe, and let us know where we went wrong in the comments section. That is what the comments are for. And we'll see you next week. Later.
See ya.